It's like a shark, NATO, except with poop.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerate it. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Oh no!
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. It's Friday. We got stories. We actually start up with breaking news here. Derek Chauvin, man who murdered George Floyd, just got sentenced today. 22 and a half years. You know what? I'll take it. Yes. The possibility that he could serve up to 40 years. Certainly, I'd have been all right with 40. I'm good with 22 and a half. I'm all right with that. The point is, the great point is that he'll be going to prison. He will never become a cop again. He will never hurt a community again. And that's it. Perfect. So, you know what? I'll take it. There has been some justice. This is good. So, good stuff. This is good news. I know a lot of people were concerned that he was going to get off super easy. And again, he didn't get the full might either of the law, but still, at the same time, that is an incredibly significant prison sentence. He is going away for a very, very long time. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, I'm just kind of reading about this because, like I said, this is breaking news. Let's see. Good to know. I no longer have to completely depend on Coward Crowder, even though it would have lasted for at least another year. Cold feet Crowder. I'm already distracted. Where are you?
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
We fucking nailed him.
Oh God. Oh, okay. Sorry. Too much fun. We can't do that here. We can't. We're not allowed to have fun on this show. It's news. What are you talking about? All right. Anyway, just kind of reading about this. Apart from Chauvin himself, I'm reading from the Independent now. Apart from Chauvin himself and Nelson, the only person to speak up on the ex-officer's behalf was his mother, who said she feared dying before her favorite son is released from prison. If that is your favorite son, I feel bad for you. I'm just saying, yikes. Yikes. Derek has played over and over in his head the events of that day. I've seen the toll it's taken on him. Okay, but The only reason, because he's done this stuff before, by the way, that was the whole thing that was brought out during the trials. The fact that he has a history of doing, of basically police brutality. You're saying that it's taking a toll on him. What took a toll on him is getting caught. That was the problem here. But hey, you know what? Good. 22 and a half years. I'm happy about that. I'll take it. I know some of you might want to be a little bit more draconian. That's totally fine. Different perspectives, but at least this man is behind bars, or is going behind bars for a very, very long time. And that's the important thing. Yeah, and the toll taken on George Floyd. Exactly. He lost his life. He will not be. He's not alive today. All right. It's good news, though. Good news. All right. So, with that breaking news, let's get to the rest of the show today. We're going to talk about, of course, Ivanka Trump and Jared trying to run away. The rehabilitation has begun. We also have Republicans attempting to use the Founding Fathers to lecture Democrats, and it not going well. New York also goes after Rudy Giuliani. And we've got a Newsmax contributor with an insane theory about critical race theory. And then I'm going to break down the bipartisan infrastructure. There's some red flags in it. Not surprising, due to the fact that it's, of course, bipartisan. So, yikes. We'll get to that, and then we'll get to the way that they're maybe trying to get around that. Fun. So. Wanting Chauvin to get the full sentencing for torturing and killing a man isn't really draconian. Well, I mean, what's the definition? The definition is getting the full term, right? It depends on what you mean. Anyway. Is that with or without chance of parole? You know what? That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. So, again, this is all breaking news to me right now. So there are details that I do not have at this moment. Okay, anyway. Is draconian a very relative term? That's the way that I used it anyway. Again, I would have liked to have seen 40, but I'm all right with this. I really am all right with this. You have some justice going on here. Okay. Anyway, let's start out with the first story. Oh, before we go anywhere, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Help me out. Also, announcement later on today, 6 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on the Cole James Cash Show. So I'm going to be doing a discussion with him and another a trans economist. So we're going to have a good conversation on, let's see, the weaponization of woke, and I believe other things. So it should be an interesting conversation. Check that out. I'll tweet that out before we go live. So that's at my Twitter account, at JeffSpot. So check that out. All right. Anyway, should be a fun conversation. Also, I have exciting news about me showing up on other shows within the coming next couple of weeks. So fantastic. Is my audio shoddy? What is wrong with my audio? What is going on here? Is anybody else having a problem with the audio today? Hold on. All right, well, sounds excellent to you. Hey, it just could be your it might just be your speakers and stuff. Is it pinging every time you might have to adjust your own audio then, your speakers or headphones or whatever you're using. So, because normally mine sounds pretty good. Oh, was there a strange noise? Interesting. I'm not sure what that is. I'll you know what? I'll have to look into it, but don't be surprised. Scuffed leftist audio happens. Is it kind of fun? No ping, just look. I'll have to do some. I'll have to look into it. Eventually, I'll get it figured out. Audio can be a little bit of a bitch to figure out sometimes. But all right, if it's good for most people and it's you can hear it, then most people are fine with it. Then I think we'll go. Oh, no ping, just Titleist. Golf joke. Okay. All right, anyway. Following the post-election meltdown of their father, an insurrection in his name, and mounting legal problems, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, also known as Jarvanka, have decided to try to distance themselves from their father. In fact, I'm going to show you a report here. It's a couple of days ago, but this is reporter Kate Bennett on CNN. She's going to talk about Trump, basically the Trump kids distancing themselves from their father and why. Take a look.
This is clearly a former president who cannot move on, who continues to talk about, everything from who portrayed him on a late night comedy sketch show to the election that he still claims was not accurate. So Jared and Ivanka were with him all the time, so much so that they coined the Jarvanka term. And this is very interesting. They do not want to be around, nor do they want to be in the orbit of this continued sort of not being able to move on, not being able to let go. And they've made a very calculated and thoughtful decision to back away and not spend as much time with the former president, who, of course, also happens to be Ivanka's father and Jared Kushner's father-in-law. One person described it to my colleague on this story, Gabby Orr, by saying it's sort of like the parent who less and less stays at daycare in the morning dropping off their child. Like slowly, Jared and Ivanka have backed away and left Trump up to his own, abilities with people around him that are varying in terms of scope and conspiracy theories and people who listen to him and his rhetoric as he continues to not be able to let go of the 2020 election.
Okay, so I love how she considers this to be a, quote, very calculated and thoughtful decision. You know what made that decision for them? Money! Money, and not only that, but of course wanting to be part of the cocktail circuit. And I also love how, by the way, in the instance of this, this is Jared and Ivanka being considered, quote unquote, the parents of this situation. What is going on here? All right, so, but no, here's the thing. This is Jared and Ivanka saying, oh, well, I didn't have anything to do with this. January 6th, what are you talking about? Oh, I had nothing to do with that. Backing away, we're just going to pull a Homer, going back into the bushes, all right? Or Spicer, Sean Spicer hiding in the bushes from reporters. I didn't have anything to do with this. It's not my fault. The problem is, it was. You know how many different things Jared Kushner himself was tasked with when he was an advisor to the president in the White House? Middle East peace. There were a lot of other things. Coronavirus response. I mean, come on. Seriously. And for them to come back and say, oh, no, we actually didn't have anything to do with that. What are you talking about? We're just going to go back now to our billionaire's bunker. And that literally, that is the place, that nicknamed the place where they moved to in Florida. Come on. And by the way, they were supposed advisors, he and Ivanka, but they used the position to benefit themselves. For example, with Ivanka, you had the trade deals, the copyrights in China, being able to sit in with the leader of China during negotiations. And you had, of course, Jared Kushner and the whole situation where you had at least, I think it was Qatar involved. using U.S. foreign policy to try to make money back from his terrible investments in this building in New York. I mean, this is ridiculous. And by the way, on that vein, remember, Jared Kushner is a slumlord. I mean, I don't, that doesn't really apply to the story, but he's a slumlord. And so the only thing that they were both trying to do when they were in these positions of power was to try to enrich themselves. And that's what it's been about. And so, no, I don't think that they should be able to Homer Simpson themselves back into the bushes and say, oh, what are you talking about? I had nothing to do with January 6th. I had nothing to do with any of this stuff. What are you talking about? I just want to go into polite circles. I want to be in the cocktail circuit again. I want to be allowed to be in the local country club. I want to enter polite society. And they can't. And because they got the Trump stench. And again, now that he's out of power, the more that I say intelligent or maybe I don't know, intelligent, if that's the word, but the more mindful members of his former inner circle, they've been doing the same thing. They've been backing away. A lot of them have been, publishing books. Tucker Carlson, that was the lead gossiper to the establishment media about Trump. They've all done the same thing. Made money off of him, off telling their stories, and backed away as Trump, of course, continues to melt down after losing the election and is propping up insane conspiracies. These people want to be rehabilitated. They want to go back into into polite society and to be venerated again by the public, accepted, welcomed back into the public. And that's why it's important to talk about this. Because I, for one, am sick of seeing terrible people get rehabilitated. I don't know if you are. I didn't like it when George W. Bush got rehabilitated. I'm not going to like it when they eventually try to rehabilitate Donald Trump. And so I don't want to see that. But again, that's what they want to do. They want to get back into that cocktail circuit. They want to go back to those elite clubs. They want to be, basically with the rest of the Washington establishment. And I don't want to see it happen. And so far, so far it hasn't. Okay? To be fair, their rich neighbors in Billionaire's Bunker don't really want anything to do with them. And they also got denied entrance to the fancy country clubs. And I'm totally here for it. Not because I like country clubs. I can't stand polite society. But it is fun to see rich people fight other rich people. I don't know. It's maybe it's like some weird hobby of mine. I don't know. Where I just like to see them fight and deny each other. And it's great. I love class traders. Even though that doesn't apply in this circumstance, I still love to see this infighting. I guess it's, so they can... The only thing that they seem to agree on is screwing over regular people. Let's just say that. World leaders will still not talk to Ivanka. It was the most awesome scene during the Trump years. Oh, God, that was fantastic. I absolutely loved that. Where she'd sit there and they'd be like, okay, yeah, sit down. Sit down, moron. We're having an adult conversation here. No, go back to the kiddie table. All right. Anyway, moving on. Actually, you know what? One more comment. They never accepted the Trumps. Okay. Yes and no. Think of it this way. They saw the Trumps as a mean to an end. The Trumps gave them everything they wanted. So they feigned like, oh, no, I'm going to get a membership to Mar-a-Lago. Why? So I can suck up to power. Power sucks up to power. Okay? But I think even that in the last administration had a limit. Because how low would you go to debase yourself, even though they have power, to Jared and Ivanka Trump, or any of the Trump kids, or Trump himself, who's an idiot? Okay. Anyway, let's go to the next one. North Carolina Representative Madison Cawthorn recently attempted to lecture his fellow congressman on facts, and, well, it went like this.
It was Thomas Jefferson that said, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. Let's cast our eyes over the facts, shall we?
Yes. Yes, let's cast our eyes over the facts. I'm so glad, Madison, you brought that up. Because it turns out the very thing that you were quoting about facts is factually incorrect. It turns out that the quote Cawthorn misattributed to Thomas Jefferson is actually from John Adams. And ironically enough, he was making that statement during his defense of British soldiers who fired upon the crowd during the Boston Massacre. To which I say, oops, sad. Adams was also likely quoting a proverb previously quoted by at least two different French writers, Tobias Smollett and Alain René Lesage. So, come on. You want to talk about facts. You want to talk about facts. Interestingly enough, using that quote and misattributing it, if those two were alive, Madison and Jefferson, first of all, blow their freaking minds. But all right, if they were alive, well, they would hate this. Turns out they were not fans of each other. In fact, during the election of 1800, and so this is where the history buff in me kind of comes out. This was dubbed one of the nastiest elections in history, where they were against each other. Jefferson supporters had accused Adams of having a, quote, hideous, hermaphroditical character. Jesus. While Adams' camp called Jefferson a, quote, mean-spirited, low-lived fellow. Jefferson also hired a journalist, James Callender, to smear him in the press, including planning a false story that wanted to start a war with France. On the day of Jefferson's inauguration, Adams took the early stagecoach out of Washington to rejoin Abigail and Quincy, and was not present during the ceremony. They would not exchange another word for 12 years. Not only did, of course, Cawthorn misappropriate this quote massively, but also confused people who hated each other. Fun. That is not surprising considering Madison Cawthorn's very poor level of education. In fact, he was homeschooled as a child, and I'm not saying that all homeschooling is bad or wrong, but I'm saying it did not have a good effect with Mr. Cawthorn, who attended a single semester of college, earning mostly D's. D is in disaster. Yikes. Suffice to say, he got obliterated on social media. In fact, here's Charles Johnson of Little Green Footballs that says, that wasn't Thomas Jefferson, it was John Adams. What an ignorant, posturing jackweasel. That's a new one, or maybe that's an old one. Another person says, just one of the stupidest people in Congress. I mean, Gohmert level stupidity. Okay, let's be fair about this one, all right? There are so many dumb Republicans in Congress right now that they're in the middle of a dumb-off. They really are. They keep trying to out-stupid each other. Again, you got Ted Cruz. You got Louis Gohmert. You've got Matt Gaetz. And on and on. On and on. So many people. Again, Gohmert talked about trying to move the moon for climate change. Jesus. One of the dumbest people in Congress. All right, more. Another person says, I give Madison Cawthorn credit for consistently being wrong about everything. True. Another person says, imagine being on this guy's staff. You'd do this to him too. Another person adds to that, I suspect his staff is similarly not very bright. Maybe. Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene. No, she's not just dumb. She's crazy. She is insanity. She's insane. pure insanity that comes from her mouth. And then, let's see, Philip Davis says, had he actually attended a school, he'd know Jefferson didn't actually say that. But I guess his mom doesn't know her history as well as she wrote up in his homeschool curriculum. Absolute morons, idiocracy, true. And then finally, getting a fact wrong about a quote about facts. Cawthorn is next level. That is some Inception level shit right there. Wow. All right. Let's go to Giuliani. Before I do, thank you, One Winged Dragon, for resubscribing at tier 1. I do appreciate that. Hey, you can do that too. You can use Prime Gaming, to subscribe on Twitch, or you can super chat, of course. Bad news for... Hold on. I lost my train of thought. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to do. All right, anyway. Former personal lawyer to President Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, is in a little bit of trouble. So now, apparently, he has been suspended from practicing law in the state of New York. Oops. So now this decision came down from the Supreme Court of New York Appellate Division, the first judicial department, and it is a suspension, and apparently will continue as the Attorney Grievance Committees continue an investigation into Giuliani and what role he played, of course, in ginning up the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. Now, the court ruled that there is, quote, uncontroverted evidence that the respondent communicated demonstrably false and misleading statements to the courts, lawmakers, and the public at large in his capacity as lawyer for former President Donald J. Trump and the Trump campaign in connection with Trump's failed effort at re-election in 2020. No kidding. Yeah. Yes, he lied. A lot. Okay, anyway. They said Giuliani's conduct immediately threatens the public interest, yes, and warrants interim suspension from the practice of law. Giuliani, later on, as a result of this, said he was, quote, not very happy with the court's decision. And he said, I made all those statements. Not a single one of them led to a protest, a riot, an incident, and anything. He said in an interview with Newsmax, obviously those statements do not have the impact of creating danger. Statements, which ones? Which one? I mean, look, obviously, the obvious one is trial by combat. Let's have a trial by combat on January 6th. I really don't think that I have to go further on that, but I will. In its ruling, the New York Appellate Court wrote of Giuliani that his false statements were made to improperly bolster respondents' narrative that due to widespread voter fraud that doesn't exist, victory in the 2020 United States presidential election was stolen from his client. The court said it relied on Giuliani's statements at press conferences, state legislative hearings, and on TV appearances, radio broadcasts, and podcasts, as well as one in-court appearance. I don't have to show you that because you've all seen it before. It's everywhere. Everywhere. But in certain cases, according to the court's ruling, Giuliani also acknowledged that the statements he made were untrue. Now, what do you call an untrue statement? Oh, right, a lie. But claimed that he didn't knowingly make a false statement. And here's some examples of this. Giuliani, without providing evidence, described the lawsuit at the Pennsylvania fraud case hearing as part of a nationwide voter fraud, as part of nationwide voter fraud involving at least 10 other jurisdictions. U.S. District Judge Matthew Brand asked Trump's lawyer, so you're alleging fraud? Giuliani responded, yes, Your Honor. Later on, Giuliani admitted to Braun that the amended complaint did not allege voter fraud at all. Giuliani then claimed that he relied on some unidentified member of his team, who goes right under the bus, who inadvertently took the information from the Pennsylvania website, again, under the bus, which had the information mistakenly listed, the court wrote, citing Giuliani's affidavit. The court concluded, however, there is simply no proof to support this explanation. Yeah. Yep. It's kind of a theme, isn't it? You know, Rudy Giuliani saying things that aren't true and having no proof to back him up because they're not true. The court noted that Giuliani on multiple occasions also baselessly claimed on his radio show, Chat with the Mayor, that there were thousands of underage voters who illegally voted in Georgia, even after the state declared the claim to be false. At various times, respondent claimed that 65,000 or 66,000 or 165,000 underage voters illegally voted in the Georgia 2020 election. Well, Rudy Giuliani would know about all things underage, wouldn't he? The court said in its order, the Georgia Office of the Secretary of State undertook an investigation of this claim, compared the list of all the people who voted in Georgia to their full birthdays. The audit revealed that there were 0 underage voters in the 2020 election. Once again, being proven false. Shocker. Shocker. And in its order, the New York court said Giuliani had, quote, made false and misleading statements that illegal aliens had voted in Arizona during the 2020 election and provided estimates at various times that ranged from 32,000 to a few 100,000. How do you not know when someone says stuff like that they're not bullshit? How can you not tell that they're not, that they're like, how can you not tell that they're bullshitting? No, of course you can tell. Of course you can tell. It clear and demonstrable lies. All of them. The court said that there are other instances of Giuliani's misconduct, not discussed in the order, because they felt the ones that they did detail were sufficient enough to make their case for an interim suspension. This guy is a 100% prevaricator. Not an honest bone in his body. Lying for money, by the way. He was getting $20,000 a day from the Trump campaign. Of course he was going to lie. He's going to lie for that money. This guy's doing a hustle. That's why he's doing this. But apparently it seems to be catching up to him. Which, hey, great, because it rarely often does to people in power. But in this case, good to see that hopefully it is catching up, and hopefully he will never be able to practice law again. Because really, and by the way, who would want to hire somebody like Giuliani who farts in court and butt dials people, butt dials the press, and does all sorts of ridiculous things? I mean, come on. They're not sending their best. That's all I'm saying. All right, moving on. I will present to you now the dumbest critical race theory take I have ever seen. All right. Raging about critical race theory is the new hotness on the right. Everybody from Tucker Carlson, Matt Gaetz, and Lauren Boebert are all talking about it. They're all freaking out about, oh my God, critical race theory. Critical race theory. It is a Marxist plot to make your kids hate themselves if they're white. Ridiculous, right? Absolutely. And if you thought that that was the dumbest take, no, you have not seen Dick Morris, but you're about to.
What do you make? I mean, this is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff making a comment like this. What do you make of that?
Incredible. This poison, critical race theory, this cancer, is affecting all of our institutions, the schools, the universities, the military, all over. And it's based on the fundamental proposition that all white people are racist, whether they are inherently that or not. Their background makes them racist.
Right.
Original sin, really.
Yeah.
And that all white people got where they got by exploiting blacks. I have a unique thought about that, though. What does this do to the children? What does this do to a kid? A quarter of all black marriages are intermarriages racially.
Wow.
So what does that do to a black boy?
A black and white kid?
Whose mother is a white and whose mother is black and his father is white. Right. What does he think? My father exploited my mother and that's how he got successful? And if the couple breaks up, do they have to choose one over the other? Does it reinforce the Oedipal notion all kids have, wanting to kill their father and marry their mother? I mean, what does this do to the children?
I'm sorry, what? Wait, what was that last part? That people want to kill their dads and marry their... What? Whoa! I'm thinking there's some projection here. Insane. I don't even know what to say about this. It's that level of crazy. And again, I thought I heard it all. Oh, Marxist plot and making your children hate themselves and white guilt and all that. But no, making black people or mixed race kids want to murder their dad and have sex with their mom is probably top tier, god tier, horrible trolling or something. I don't know. It's either he's trolling or he's that, or this is super, super projection. Wow. And by the way, what does this do to children? It actually makes children more informed so that we can actually change society to benefit all of us. Understand that critical race theory is nothing more than a scholarly framework that seeks to understand the role of race in racism and how it has played in all different aspects of society. And let me give you an example of some of them, right? Housing, redlining, policing. Just today, Derek Chauvin was finally sentenced for the murder of George Floyd, of which he kneeled on his neck for over 9 minutes. And that's not the first and only time someone has kneeled on the neck of a black man, or that a black man who is not doing anything wrong or anything has been murdered by police during a stop, during an arrest. And so there's more. You have education. You have, of course, the way that the zoning system is created and the way that the tax system and schools are funded that benefits wealthier neighborhoods. Well, white people have had traditionally more wealth, more built up wealth because of what happened with segregation, slavery, Jim Crow, etc., preventing the black population in America from being able to accrue wealth at the same rate as white people. You have incarceration, you have employment, you have debt. Once again, you have the building of wealth, home ownership, being able to, get a higher education and not get preyed upon by for-profit schools, building up that debt. And so you've got all of those different factors that are part of critical race theory. It basically just explains how everything actually is. There's no teaching kids like you're bad because you're white. No, that's not involved in this, but understand that's what they want them to think. And that's why, again, you've got the right wing that are doing this projection upon other people, because I think that they believe that people who are black are bad because they're black. And that is, of course, in essence, racism. But anyway, their reaction to this has been extreme. So far, legislation banning critical race theory, which again, this is an explanation of how things have worked in this country, have been proposed in 22 different states, signed into law into 5, Idaho, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, and Tennessee. And by the way, legislators, and they're all hiding behind the kids, by the way. Okay? They're all hiding behind the kids, saying that critical race theory, quote, tries to make kids feel bad. Wait, this coming from a party that used to say facts over feelings. And they also used to run with the slogan of fuck your feelings. So Tennessee lawmakers also said teaching about racism promotes division. Gee, I wonder why they'd say that. And a pending bill in Rhode Island bans teaching the idea that the United States of America is fundamentally racist or sexist. Understand that this is a reaction to something that actually isn't happening. Schools are not teaching. These schools where this is getting banned don't even teach critical race theory to children. Nothing to do with children. Yes, it has nothing to do. It's not being taught in K through 12. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They have found something to freak out about, and they are just, they're going all in. Pedal to the metal. And why? Of course, it's a distraction, as always. Again, you think that they know what this is about? Hell no. An NBC News analysis found at least 165 local and national groups aim to disrupt lessons on race and gender. These groups are largely reinforced by conservative think tanks, law firms, and quote-unquote activist parents who don't even know what this is about. And in fact, they're starting to use this as a catch-all to anything that's about race or sexism or anything. In fact, Jonathan Chisholm, an assistant professor of history at the University of Houston downtown and co-editor of critical race studies across disciplines, writes, any anti-racist effort is now being labeled as critical race theory. Kind of like any sort of, thing that helps regular working class people. For example, raising the minimum wage to a living wage or above, or, Medicare for all, or an increase in healthcare. Sort of, they're doing the same thing with critical race theory, anti-racism, as they're doing with that and calling it socialism, for example, right? And even critical race theory, they're calling Marxist. It's ridiculous. There's more. He says many that are condemning critical race theory haven't read it or studied it intensely. This is largely predicated on fear, the fear of losing power and influence and privilege. The larger issue that this is all stemming from is a desire to deny the truth about America, about racism. Now, why would you want to do that? Unless, of course, your power is derived from ignorance of that, of the history. And let me just tell you, if you are somebody who is anti-racism, as a lot of these people on the right have outed themselves as, I got news for you. That means you're pro-racism. Just saying. Just saying. Okay. Anyway. Bub Dragon, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub. And, by the way, for subscribing at tier 1. Appreciate that. Let's go over here to YouTube. I know there's a super chat here. I need to find it. A couple of them, actually. Do I like foreign movies? I generally don't watch foreign movies. But watch the 1985 film. Come and see. Recommended that when your kids are old enough to show them too. I don't have any, but I will definitely take your suggestion under advisement. Gabby Mathis says, we will never get an infrastructure bill since Democrats don't fight for it. I am going to talk about this. This is interesting. Does anime count? Oh, that's a good question. Question for another time. I got to get to this infrastructure. Okay. It appears that it appears there might be a bipartisan deal on infrastructure, but it's also not good. So now let me break down what the deal is and what some of the red flags are in this new bipartisan compromise infrastructure bill. So now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a core bipartisan group of 10 senators has recently reached a deal with the White House on Thursday to spend about $973 billion over 5 years and $1.2 trillion if continued over 8 years. So of course that is a big if, $1.2 trillion, that probably will not get spent if Republicans get back into power. Now, this package, however, would apparently only fund improvements to roads, bridges, transit, airports, and enhanced infrastructure for broadband, water, and electric vehicles. Now, generally, that spending doesn't sound too bad. All right? And I'm totally fine with that. But as you can see, the framework, and that's what this is really focused only on physical infrastructure. And so let me give you more details about what's in it. The plan includes nearly $400 billion in expected baseline transportation funding that Congress must regularly renew, so there's no guarantee on that, along with $579 billion in new spending. Of the new spending, $312 will go to transportation projects, and $266 billion will go to other infrastructure like water systems, broadband, and improving power grids, which needs it. You definitely need it. The transportation section has $109 billion of funding for roads and bridges, $49 for mass transit, that's $49 billion, $66 billion for passenger and freight rail, $25 billion for airports, $16 billion for seaports and waterways, and $15 billion for EV infrastructure and electric buses. Also includes provisions for infrastructure financing and safety. And of course, you have $55 billion going to water infrastructure, $65 billion for broadband, $73 billion for building thousands of miles of new transmission lines intended to speed the transition to renewable energy. There's also $21 billion for environmental remediation of polluted areas to Superfund sites. And of course, $47 billion for resilience projects to deal with climate change, extreme weather events, and cyber attacks. Of course, the money for climate change doesn't seem like it would be all that much enough. And so, but there it is. There's nothing about elder care, child care, education, just strictly roads, bridges, and the like. Okay. Now, how are you going to pay for it? Well, not by raising taxes. Republicans rejected the White House plan to raise taxes on corporations to cover the cost. And the White House has opposed the lawmakers' ideas to index the gas tax to inflation and charge fees to electric vehicles to finance the spending. So basically, Republicans understand they wanted you to pay more in gas taxes. That was their plan. Great. Champions of the middle class, folks. As opposed to, by the way, which is incredibly popular, the idea of taxing corporations. They would rather say, no, we're going to shift the cost to the middle class, to regular people, working class, who drive to work every day, who commute. We're going to increase that gas tax, make you pay for it. Because we're not going to have anything to touch our donors. We're not going to let anything touch those donors. We are the shield. We will protect you. And that's what it is. That's what it's about. Now, here's where another red flag comes into play. Lawmakers expect to raise about $100 billion through public-private partnerships, direct pay municipal bonds, according to a person familiar with the discussions. They also plan to generate a net of about $100 billion by investing $40 billion to tighten enforcement at the IRS. That's fine. They also want to repurpose $80 billion from prior pandemic relief bills. But again, no raising corporate taxes. But again, there's more. But first, let's talk about corporate taxes. You know that 55 of the nation's largest corporations paid nothing in federal taxes. More than $40 billion in profits last year. During a pandemic. It's insane that this is not even in the bill. It's insane that Republicans are like, no, we're not going to raise corporate taxes. Not once. Not a tiny little fraction. Nothing. You will get nothing from our corporate donors. Absolutely nothing. Even though they made billions upon billions of dollars in profit. We don't care. We're going to soak regular people. That's the sickness in America. That's the compromise? Come on. Not only that, but it gets worse. Always gets worse. They received, these corporations, a combined federal rebate of more than $3 billion for an effective tax rate of negative 9%. It gets worse. Common Dream staff writer Jessica Corbett points out in a recent article saying that the proposal that has progressives alarmed, and a lot of this stuff alarms me, is relying on public-private partnerships, private activity bonds, direct pay bonds, and something called asset recycling. Asset recycling. Asset recycling, by the way, involves the sale or lease of public assets to the private sector. This is privatization. 100%. So the government can then put the money that they sell from public assets to putting it towards new investment. That policy was previously encouraged by former President Donald Trump, despite lessons from Australia about its pitfalls. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Apparently, in Australia, they tried this, and it failed, because the core problem with it is that income-generating assets were sold to finance new investments that did not generate any income, rather than like selling your house to buy an expensive car. This is a trick that can only be done once and leaves governments with increased amounts of debt. Rihanna Eckel, an organizer with Food and Water Watch, also cautioned that this entire thing could, quote, facilitate a Wall Street takeover of public services like water. Mary Grant, the advocacy group Public Water for All director, echoed that warning as well Thursday, saying this White House-approved infrastructure deal is a disaster in the making. It promotes privatization and so-called public-private partnerships instead of making public investments in publicly owned infrastructure. You know, like we would if we actually just did that. There's literally nothing stopping us from putting money into infrastructure. If we can print out trillions of dollars in liquidity to give to the banks, why the hell can't we use that to fund infrastructure, public infrastructure, instead of selling off public assets to be recycled to private corporations to use the money? It's ridiculous. Grant also noted that communities across the country have been ripped off by public-private schemes that enrich corporations and Wall Street investors and leave the rest of us to pick up the tab. One example Common Dreams recently reported on was the privatization of Chicago's public parking meters. Illinois drivers recently filed a class action lawsuit alleging that Chicago had granted a private company, quote, monopoly control over the city's parking meter system for the next 75 years. So let me get that straight. Chicago said, let's sell off our parking meter system to a private corporation for 75 years. Is anyone going to be driving cars in 75 years? Well, I guess they're going to try to make sure of it so they can get the money back from their investment. Jesus. So, great. All of these red flags, massive privatization, and no investments in human beings. And of course, at least we get to fix some infrastructure, though. I mean, yeah, well, there you go. Something, right? But it gets worse. One more. American Prospect staff writer Alex Salmon also pointed out that this bipartisan infrastructure bill, the infrastructure that they invest in mostly is in fossil fuels. Expanding airports, freeways, ports, and again, privatization. It goes backwards on climate. Doesn't do anything about climate. So really, I mean, I read you the numbers on how much it actually invests in doing anything about climate change, and it does next to nothing. So this is garbage. Not again, not all of the plan is bad. Obviously, we do need to do stuff about infrastructure, but it really does not go far enough. And the privatization is very, very concerning. If this is all we're going to get, well, then it sucks. And it's a bad deal. And it shouldn't be, passed one and done and called a victory, because it absolutely is not. Okay. That said, we're going to go to what they might be doing. But first, I gotta take out the trash. I love taking care of the garbage. Give me more. Give me more trashy trolls. I will crush them all. Why are you against free speech, Jeff? Free speech. Shut the fuck up. It's my channel. All right, anyway. One more here. LL said, thank you so much, by the way, for that gigantic donation. The fervor drummed up by the right over the critical race theory is thinly veiled white supremacy. From now on, the culture war is the only Republican policy you will see outside of cutting taxes, deregulation, nothing else. 100%. 100%. Nailed it. And again, this is not surprising. Anybody who's paid attention here to the Republican policies of the last 30 years, it has basically all been culture war, white aggrievement, white national, white supremacy, and all of that wrapped up with, tax cuts and deregulation. That's all they've done, because it's all they know how to do. And they're really, the only purpose, as I said before, the Republican Party is a money funneling scheme from the middle class, working class to the rich. Until there is no more middle class. Because the rich will have sucked it up, all the money. Drinking that milkshake. Okay. Anyway, let's go to one more story here, and then I got to get going on the infrastructure. Again, more infrastructure. The new infrastructure framework being put forward by a group of bipartisan senators is being criticized because it's not great. It actually leaves out important priorities, for example, climate change, as well as things like human infrastructure, as President Biden likes to call it, as well as pushing some red flag stuff like privatization. And they also decided for some reason to leave out increases in taxes on corporations. So now the package, which President Biden characterized as the product of serious compromises on both ends, will be far smaller than the president's original American Jobs Plan, which proposed roughly $2.2 trillion in new infrastructure spending. The plan, as I mentioned, involves no new additional taxes. Instead, the framework proposes financing the plan by repurposing unspent unemployment insurance funds, reducing the IRS tax gap, and utilizing public-private partnerships and asset recycling. Progressive advocacy groups have warned the latter two pay-fors would hand public infrastructure over to corporations and Wall Street investors. Absolutely. Now, the bipartisan deal also omits significant investments in combating climate change, prompting concern from Senator Ron Wyden. So now, here's what he said during a call hosted by Climate Power. Quote, "I am not willing to support throwing climate overboard." Jamal Rad, executive director at Evergreen Action, said this deal was nowhere near meets the scale and scope of the climate crisis, which is true. It gives somewhere around $40 billion and then also funds electric vehicle infrastructure. Now, there's more. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, she weighed in. She said the bipartisan package alone isn't acceptable. Here are some of her tweets. The diversity of this bipartisan coalition pretty perfectly conveys which communities get centered and which get left behind when leaders prioritize bipartisan deal-making over inclusive lawmaking, which prioritizes, as she explains, delivering the most impact possible for the most people. She said, this is why bipartisan package alone isn't acceptable. The exclusion and denial of our communities is what DC bipartisan deals require. That is how you get GOP on the board. Don't do much or any for the working class and low income or women or people of color communities or unions. We must do more. And shockingly, I'm going to blow your minds right now. Nancy Pelosi has said no to the bipartisan deal unless she can get something else as well through reconciliation. So let me give you the details on that. And again, I'm not a fan of Nancy Pelosi here, okay? But here's what she said. House Speaker Pelosi told reporters that the lower chamber will not vote on bipartisan infrastructure until the Senate also passes a reconciliation bill containing the Democratic priorities that were excluded from the compromise measure, including spending on safety net programs, green energy, and more. So now this is an interesting political gamble. And so, look, understand that politics is terrible, and it's stupid, and it sucks. But unfortunately, it is also an important thing of, it basically, this is how it works. Politics is stupid, but necessary. So right now, she is playing politics. And actually, it's kind of smart politics, saying, hey, look, we'll do the bipartisan deal, sure, as long as you also push something through budget reconciliation. Now, remember, budget reconciliation only requires 50 senators. So now she's making sure that Joe Manchin and Joe Biden get their, we get our bipartisan deal. Look at us. We're so bipartisan. And that they also push through some of the stuff that was missing. Again, that's actually smart politically, in my opinion. Now, of this reconciliation package, this would be crafted by Senator Bernie Sanders and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. They're working on a $6 trillion package that includes expanding Medicare and other progressive agenda items. So now, this is not expanding the Medicare for all, but I think it's a step in that direction. And so I'll take it. It includes dental, includes vision. And so I would like to see something get passed. It would be difficult, but I would like to see it. Now, Biden also expressed support for the two-track approach to the bipartisan deal and reconciliation package during his remarks on Thursday, noting that GOP lawmakers refused to accept the inclusion of elements of the American Families Plan, and said this, quote, Republicans in this group did not want to go along with many of my family plan issues, the child tax credits, the human infrastructure that I talk about. We'll see what happens in the reconciliation bill and the budget process. If we can get some compromise there, if we can't, I'll see if I can attract all the Democrats to a position. They're going to move on a dual track. The president later told reporters that he will not sign the bipartisan bill if it reaches his desk without the Democratic reconciliation package. It's in tandem, he said. Look, again, kind of smart if they can pull it off. Pass a package where you can agree and do reconciliation on where you don't. The result is, if done correctly, you play Mitch McConnell. That said, Republicans now already know what the plan is, and you already have seen Republicans pulling out from the bipartisan deal if they decide to also go along with reconciliation, which would leave only reconciliation, which again, if they do that, here's what I would do, right? So you get Republicans that pull out of the bipartisan deal, you go, all right, well, we tried bipartisanship. Now, Mitch McConnell, not Mitch McConnell, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, get off your ass. We're pushing this through budget reconciliation. And if you don't, we are going to defund you. We're going to make sure that you lose your election. Because what's the point? I know. Oh, but they're Democrats that don't vote with us on incredibly important issues. You don't go along with this, well, you're on your own. Just saying. And maybe that's not smart politically. But I guess we'll have to see, because I'm tired of seeing people defend Joe Manchin for doing nothing. But again, speaking of nothing, right? There is always the possibility that this does nothing. That nothing will actually happen, and that they will not follow through on their threats, and that they'll somehow say, oh, okay, well, now that we have this, whatever bipartisan deal going through the Senate, I guess we'll vote for it. This is the best we could do. What could we do? Republicans win again. I don't know if that's going to happen. Judging on how history has gone, I don't have huge hopes for the Democrats. But if they can get this done, well, that would be both good politics, incredibly smart, and might actually allow them to win in the midterms. And I think the one thing the Democrats want to do is win and retain their power. They'd be stupid not to. Just say. All right. Manchin gets 0 cookies. True. Very, very true. All right. Thank you. Madi Darno saying we made it to Friday. We did. And TGIF, right? All right. So I'm going to have to go and get ready to be in the Cole James Cash Show. Check that out. I can't put the link in the description, but you can follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet it out there. That'll be fun. And otherwise, I will see you all on Monday. You have an excellent weekend. Stay safe. Have fun. And we will see you later. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Night Nation. Have a great weekend.
Oh no!
How you like that, boy? You idiot.
Mike Pounds.
Tighten up my knee. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
We fucking nailed him!